This is my propaganda project. I started this project a while ago with the intention of creating a moving poster, sorry. I started the project by researching multiple different types of propaganda. I tried researching every type of propaganda I could find. My favorite one was bandwagon. That was the act of peer pressure in propaganda. Posters that tell you to do things because other people are doing them, or something like that. I needed to come up with a theme for my moving poster. So I started mind mapping things that I was passionate about. This included loyalty or respect and freedom, stuff like that. I decided that this was like a nice way of starting my project, brainstorming some ideas, mind mapping them. But all the ideas I came up with were quite weak, so I decided to try to develop them again and again and again. Try to think of something quite creative that was interesting. I decided on animal rights and how animals are farmed for food and genetically modified and stuff like this, because that personally interested me and it's something that I'm relatively passionate about. I created a animation about my chosen theme from a creative word piece. I additionally created a poem, but I liked the word piece a lot more. The animation was relatively short. It was about a minute long. It took me quite a while to create though. I animated each individual word to appear on the screen, one after the other, as I say them during the video. It looks quite interesting. I came up with multiple different typefaces to use, and my background was moving. I just enjoyed how they transitioned onto the screen. My creative writing was pretty interesting as well, I believe. From my initial mind map research, I decided that I need to research more stronger and creative and interesting topics. So I researched things like the animal trade or the farming of animals again because I wanted to learn more about it, and was interested in developing that for my final idea. But I also researched other things like propaganda in the war, like World War propaganda, the use of carpools and getting people to join the army and stuff like that, as I found that quite interesting. That opened my eyes to some of the most iconic pieces of propaganda, the most well-known types of propaganda, like the "We Can Do It" poster and "We Want You" for the U.S. Army, or "I Want You" for the U.S. Army. That's more of a talking to the audience, breaking the fourth wall kind of posters. These are pretty effective, and I was kind of interested into researching them more. I additionally researched a type of propaganda surrounding a American tribe that were trying to defend their land. They referred to it as their sacred land from people cracking and farming their land for oils and stuff like that. This would have obviously destroyed the landscape, would create noise pollution, air pollution, just pollution in general. It would make a very poor place to call sacred land. So they defended it as firmly as they can, and they're still doing it now. It's one of the more modern types of propaganda. They would strap themselves to the equipment that they used, and they would get multiple people from society, from local towns or cities, to come out and help and just stay there for hours and hours on end, trying to make sure that they will not destroy their land. It was quite interesting to me to research, and after researching it more and more, I discovered that the people kind of trying to control these people that were defending their land were refraining to using water cannons and rubber bullets to keep them at bay. This is quite intense and kind of uncalled for. but still quite interesting. My final type of propaganda that I researched was my most interested piece, but I feel like it was kind of lacking information, and I didn't really have enough evidence to interpret this as my final project. But this was propaganda in Korea, like war propaganda, propaganda about America, and I was researching this. I saw their posters, their designs, and they were really interesting, really like artistic and creative. But the main thing I loved about their work was the color palette. They would have really nice dark blues with like pale reds and kind of eggshell creamy colors, and then sometimes darker browns. And it just worked really nicely, and I wanted to evaluate this color palette and like develop it for my own personal work. Whilst researching into Korea, I also discovered the use of concentration camps and monuments to leaders that set off alarms, built us like these monuments built out of solid gold, and absurd things like this. The use of concentration camps is kind of insane, but I didn't really have much evidence to back this. It was on maps, it was rumored, it had backing evidence to it, but just not enough for me to be sure. From this, though, I definitely enjoyed the color palette. So I went on to research color. I used multiple different websites, programs, and everything to assist me getting the strongest and most vibrant colors, or like the most commonly used colors in some cases, from certain images. I took the color palette from the propaganda posters in Korea. I then also went on to research my imagery that I would use. This imagery included like rust and textured things that I was interested in. I wanted the colors from. I then took the colors from this, mainly from the Korean propaganda, as it had the strongest colors in my personal opinion. But then I went to look for layout. Whilst looking for layout, I was researching other posters, mainly posters from movies or films. Discovered that a lot of the posters out there that are popular are from movie posters, and the way they're laid out is that they have the title at the bottom, the text about the like release date or stuff like that slightly underneath it, and then a headline or tagline above it. That was like smaller, but I enjoyed it a lot because I thought this was like a nice layout because it didn't take away from the main image. That should always be the main focus, but you could also still have a bold title, a nice eye-catching title that people will remember, as long as your name is good enough. I went on to like distribute my name. I researched into different types of names I could use. I just brainstormed keywords from the kind of topic. That was my animal topic, like meat, flesh, stuff like that. And I decided on the name Butcher House, as it was more mysterious, and you'd look at it and be like, oh, this is obviously like murdery or stuff like that. Obviously, some stuff goes down here, but you don't really know what it could. You don't doesn't specify what type of meat is being butchered. And I kind of found that quite interesting. I then went on to create 6 different drafts for my like layouts that I was interested in, using secondary source images to put into the layouts that I made. This took a while, but I feel like it was kind of needed because I was learning more about how I wanted my work to be laid out. Sadly, though, the use of secondary source images didn't really convey what I wanted to express as easily, but it was definitely a needed thing. I then went on to create a GIF because I wanted to learn more about the project or like the course that I'm taking here, and I wanted to learn the most amount about digital arts as possible. So I created a little repeating GIF from rotoscoping, a type of like drawing each frame, and kind of I just went creative with it and moved my feet around in the actual video that I used as backing. But in the actual GIF, I've like got rocket boots and just kind of flying around, what have you. I then went on to create my like movement in the design sheet. So in the design sheets, I made, I had three different sections. One was just the layout, the second one was the layout with secondary source images in it, and then the third one was my movement. I tried to express as much as I could, like the movement that would be going into it. For my final design piece, the original idea was to have um, a like picture of a barn and then zoom into inside the barn by zooming into the barn, and then you'd see a whole different scene. I decided that this wasn't enough for the amount of like professional like work I wanted to create. I wanted to make it look as creative as possible. So what I did is the sky kind of like was darkened. You'd get three flashes of lightning that were drawn by hand each frame of the lightning. The lightning, like there was three pictures obviously, and then they went right next to each other, frame by frame, separating each frame by a full black like square and white. So it would go black, white, frame of lightning, black, white, frame of lightning. I enjoyed this because it like added a flash to each lightning, and then it would zoom in to the barn quickly. I had to create multiple mood boards to be able to get like ideas for font, color, and imagery. Mainly, my color was coming from Korean propaganda, but I went to research into Rust and stuff like that. The images that I used or like designed from were pictures of barns, like stereotypical like red country barns and stuff like that. I also researched into like how animals appear in these situations. It was quite graphic for my project, but still, I feel like propaganda needs to have a stapled response. I then went on to create a presentation in front of the class explaining my like work and what I had made. This is quite good because I spoke about um, all of my research in Korea, my mind maps, my design sheets, and layouts that I designed. It went on for quite a while, but I feel like I summarized everything I wanted to and received good feedback. The feedback was little post-it notes from each student. Mainly, everyone was liking how concentrated I was, how much I responded to like my research and all my research. I got some constructive criticism stating that I should have spoken more about fonts. That was correct. I didn't speak enough about fonts, but my font design or like what I wanted to design for my fonts was more um, high impact, bold, kind of jittered letters, maybe with cracks in them, or very thin serifs with like a straight, like right angle kind of serif. So it wouldn't be smooth or anything. It would just be kind of straight into it. But I feel like my project has evolved nicely and I've enjoyed creating it. I've finished making the final piece now, and whilst watching this video, you've obviously noticed me creating the final piece. I've created the imagery. That was obviously the lightning bolts, the outside of the barn and the inside, and then put them into my like program and just created each frame or stuff like that in After Effects and laid them out. So thank you for listening. I've enjoyed making this, and this is my conclusion to my project.